On a long stretch of national highway, an old car was rolling toward a turnoff by the roadside, where a sign pointed to a fishing area deep in the forest's edge. Inside the car were two young men, listening to the radio while puffing on cigarettes. As they turned onto the narrow road, Tan, who was behind the wheel, frowned in slight irritation and said, "Hey Nguyen, who told you about this place? We still have to drive another 10 kilometers in. The road's rough. If there's no fish when we get there..." "Oh, come on. What are you so worried about? I saw it advertised online. They said there are a lot of big fish and the fishing fee is cheap. If it's far, we'll just stay there tonight and go back tomorrow." The man named Nguyen replied with a smile. These two were seasoned anglers, often traveling far to hunt for big fish. One day, while scrolling through Facebook, Nguyen stumbled upon someone advertising this place. Without much discussion, the two hit the road immediately. After a while, at the end of the road leading to the fishing spot, the car came to a stop. The two men slowly stepped out of the vehicle. Before them stretched a large dam, several hundred meters wide, surrounded by dense melaleuca trees and abandoned houses. These buildings, designed like rental rooms, were built by the lake owner for anglers to rest during overnight fishing trips. Every so often, strong splashes stirred the clear blue water, a sign of large fish beneath. Tan took a deep breath, patted his belly, and said with approval, "Not bad. This place looks decent. But why don't I see anyone else fishing here? Strange. I told you there are giant fish here. Judging by the ripples, they must weigh at least 20 kilos. Haha, let's go find the lake owner. Probably a new spot. Not many people know about it yet." Nguyen replied with a chuckle, and the two of them headed toward a small house at the lake's edge, where a middle-aged man was sitting back in a chair with his fishing rod, eyes closed, resting. He didn't seem to notice the two young men approaching. Standing next to the man, Nguyen spoke softly. "Uncle, we heard this place allows fishing, right?" The man opened his eyes upon hearing the unfamiliar voice, looked the two men up and down, then stood up with a smile and said, "That's right. I'm the owner here. You guys want to fish?" Nguyen replied, "Yes, we do. How much is it?" Single hook fishing is 100,000 VND per day. For multi-hook or bottom fishing, it's 50,000 VND per hour. What kind of fishing do you plan to do? The lake owner quoted his price while looking at the two men. Nguyen nodded and replied, "We'll do bottom fishing. Here's $1 million in advance. We'll settle the rest when we leave." Nguyen pulled out his wallet and handed over $1 million dong. The lake owner accepted it happily and said, "All right then, it's 3 p.m. now. Do you want to start fishing right away? Oh, and by the way, I'm Nam." "Yes, Uncle Nam. We'll start now," Nguyen replied with a smile. He and Tan left Mr. Nam and walked back to the car to get their fishing gear. They picked a good spot and began casting bait and rods. A light breeze swept through Nguyen's hair, making him feel relaxed. The scenery was unusually quiet, with an eerie stillness in the air. 3 hours passed, and neither of them had caught a single fish. Despite the fish biting nearby, luck hadn't come their way. By now it was getting dark. Mr. Nam approached and said, "When do you two plan to stop?" Nguyen, still holding his rod, replied, "We're planning to fish overnight. We'll stop when we catch something." Mr. Nam looked at them with a somewhat indescribable expression and sighed. "All right then, keep fishing. My house is 2 kilometers from here, right on the forest edge near the trail. Come by tomorrow morning to settle the payment." With that, he left, leaving the two men to continue fishing. It was dusk now. Nguyen gathered some dry branches from the forest edge and started a fire. The flames lit up the still darkness, with only the two men remaining. The night breeze brought with it a chill. The place was desolate, surrounded only by wilderness. Plop, plop. Nguyen was tending the fire when he suddenly heard water splashing. Tan suddenly shouted, holding his rod, "The fish bit! Nguyen, help me. This one's huge." Nguyen quickly tossed the dry branches into the fire and rushed to help Tan with the rod. The fish was truly massive. Even with both of them pulling, it managed to drag them closer and closer to the water's edge. Sensing something was wrong, Nguyen quickly shouted, "Hold on a sec. I'll grab a rope and tie myself off. Damn it, this one's almost 40 kilos. Must be a black carp. Be careful or it'll drag us into the lake." With that, Nguyen quickly dropped his rod and ran toward the car to grab a coil of rope. He tied one end to the car and wrapped the rest around his body before running back to Tan. But just as he returned, Nguyen was suddenly startled. He shined his flashlight all around the lake in a panic, only to see Tan sitting still behind him, rod resting in hand, no longer struggling with a fish like moments before. He seemed to be just sitting there. Nguyen felt a bit disappointed and asked, "Where's the fish? Did it get away?" Tan remained silent in front of him, unmoving in the dim firelight. After Nguyen's words, the air suddenly turned deathly still, eerily silent, almost frightening. Nguyen looked at Tan and suddenly took a step back, stammering, Why are you all wet? And where'd you get those clothes from? You're not Tan." Before him was that familiar figure, yet something about it felt entirely foreign. Tana's outfit looked like an old-school student uniform from the subsidy era, soaked completely through. The shirt was torn in several places, blotched with dark stains. What was once a white shirt was now covered in green moss, decayed and slimy. His hands gripping the rod were thin, pale, and ghostly white, unnaturally so. It looked like Tan, but it wasn't Tan. He had never been that pale. Crack, crack. Suddenly, Tan twisted his head sharply around. His neck bent unnaturally as both hands reached back to wrench it into a 90-degree angle. The sound of cracking bones echoed horrifically. With a jolt, Nguyen stumbled backward, tripping over a rock and falling hard onto the ground. Terrified, Nguyen scrambled backward, eyes locked on the figure. It still had Tana's face. He stammered, You, how could you?" Tan, seeing Nguyen's fear, gave a twisted, sinister smile. His face was full of malevolence as he sat motionless, staring at Nguyen. A bizarre voice rasped, "Come, here, help me, pull the fish." The eerie smile and the strange voice made Nguyen's skin crawl. He quickly untied the rope from his waist and bolted toward the car. Suddenly, Tan burst out laughing and shouted, "You idiot! I'm not a ghost. I'm human. Haha, scaredy cat." Nguyen, in full sprint, stopped dead in his tracks when he heard Tana's words. His heart pounded as he turned back cautiously and asked, "Then, why are your hands so pale? Where did those clothes come from? Don't lie to me. Where's my friend? You're not human." As soon as he finished speaking, Tan stood up, grinning triumphantly. He took off the white shirt, wiped the powder off his hands, and laughed. "You fell for it, scaredy cat. I recorded the whole thing. I'll make you famous when we get back." "Ha-ha!" Nguyen collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, one hand clutching his chest while the other hurled a rock at Tan. "You scared the hell out of me, you bastard. I've never seen anyone as jumpy as you." Tan laughed victoriously, then sat back down and picked up his fishing rod again, pulling out his phone to rewatch the video he'd recorded. Seeing this, Nguyen rushed over to grab the phone and erase the footage, but Tan suddenly dropped the phone to the ground, trembling and speechless. Nguyen looked at him, confused. "What's wrong with you?" Tana's hands were shaking as he pointed at the phone. "Why, take a look." Curiosity got the better of Nguyen. He picked up the phone and looked at Tan suspiciously. Seeing Tana's terrified expression, he couldn't resist and turned it on. But after just 5 seconds of playback, Nguyen recoiled in shock and flung the phone away. Both men locked eyes, then slowly turned to look at the old-school uniform shirt that Tan had taken off and thrown beside the fire. Nguyen gathered his courage, took a deep breath, and asked, Where did you get that shirt?" Tan looked at Nguyen, then toward the edge of the lake. "When we were pulling the rod earlier, it wasn't a fish. The hook snagged the shirt from the lake bottom. While you were grabbing the rope, I pulled it out and thought it'd be funny. So I smeared flour on my hands and put the shirt on to scare you." But the moment he finished speaking, both men fell silent. Gwyn's voice trembled with fear. If that's all it was, then how could the shirt pull us toward the lake with that much force? It was clearly dragging us back. And on the phone, we both saw it, didn't we? That figure wearing the same shirt, standing next to me. Tan nodded. His face had grown serious. He quickly reeled in his fishing rod and spoke urgently. Let's go. I'm getting freaked out. Gwyn felt the same. He hurriedly packed up his gear, desperate to leave that cursed place. But just then, the sound of fish thrashing echoed once more. The sign of a fish biting the bait came again at Tana's fishing rod just as he was reeling in the line. Swoosh! Swoosh! This time, the pull was so strong and sudden that Tan couldn't react in time and was dragged forward a few steps. He frowned and shouted, Gwyn, a fish! It's biting, pull! Pull my ass! That's not a fish! Drop the rod! Gwyn was still packing up when he saw Tan struggling with the rod. The terrifying events that had just happened flashed through his mind, and he no longer cared whether there was a fish or not. He just wanted to get out of there and yelled at Tan to let go of the rod. But unfortunately, Tan wasn't as easily scared as Gwyn. Even though he had been shaken, the thrill of hooking a big fish was too tempting. He couldn't bring himself to drop the rod and kept pulling. Damn it! Come help me. Let's reel this thing in. Then we'll go. Tan looked around, gathered his courage, and started reeling in with all his strength. The sound of splashing grew louder, a sign that the fish, or whatever it was getting closer to the shore. Tan was visibly excited and nervously pointed his flashlight toward the water. But what made them freeze in terror was that there wasn't a fish at the end of the line. It was a pale white hand emerging from the water, gripping the fishing line. Gwyn immediately let go and screamed, Run! Tan, like Gwyn, was stunned for a moment, then dropped the rod and bolted toward the car. They jumped into the car, hearts pounding. Tana's hands were trembling as he shoved the key into the ignition, desperately trying to start the engine, only thinking about escaping as fast as possible. But the car wouldn't budge. No matter how hard Tan tried, the engine wouldn't start. Furious, he cursed, Damn it! The car won't start. What now? Let me try. This can't just be a coincidence. Gwyn leaned over and slammed his foot on the gas. But no matter how much he fumbled, nothing changed. Hey, you two, come play with me. The water's so nice. Hi. While they were still struggling, a childlike voice full of haunting sorrow echoed through the area, drifting across the surface of the lake, through the grass, piercing the windows, and straight into their ears. Both Tan and Gwyn froze, eyes locked on the lakeshore near the fire. There, they could faintly see the silhouette of a child, around 12 or 13 years old, small in stature, its face obscured by swirling mist. In one hand, it held a slimy shirt covered in moss, and with the other, it waved gently toward the car. The figure floated in the air, swaying with the wind. Suddenly, Tan couldn't hold it in and vomited inside the car. Gwyn, still staring ahead, felt his stomach churn violently, on the verge of throwing up. Only 3 words echoed in his mind. This is disgusting. On the child's body, chunks of flesh were falling off with drops of lake water, revealing white bones beneath. Swarms of small fish poured out of the gaping wounds, and maggots writhed within the decaying flesh. Even more horrifying, large eels squirmed inside the exposed abdomen, writhing and coiling together. Ugh. Ugh. What do we do now? We can't just stay like this. Tan, done vomiting, couldn't bear to look ahead anymore. He turned to Gwyn and asked, Mr. Nam's house isn't far from here. Maybe we can. Clack, clack. Before Gwyn could finish, a knocking sound came from his window. Both of them heard it clearly, but neither dared turn to look. Their nerves were stretched taut like a bowstring. At this point, one glance might cause a heart attack or scare their souls out of their bodies. Gwyn mustered the last bit of courage he had and shouted, Open the door. Run. Hearing that, Tan didn't hesitate. He flung the door open and sprinted down the dirt path. Gwyn quickly followed, pulling the key out of the ignition and chasing after him. Neither of them spoke a word as they ran at full speed, one in front and one behind. After a while, their footsteps began to slow. They had forgotten their flashlights at the lakeshore, and now they were surrounded by suffocating darkness. The only sounds were their own heavy breathing. Gwyn pulled out his phone to make a call, but they were too deep in the wilderness, no signal. He turned on the flashlight mode and scanned the area. Looking at Tan gasping nearby, and the dense forest all around, he gave a bitter smile. "We're lost." Tan looked down at his feet. The ground was littered with dry branches and leaves, surrounded by towering trees. This was clearly deep forest, not the dirt path Mr. Nam had described. Gwyn took a deep breath and moved closer to Tan, cautiously surveying the area. "What do we do now? We ran in a panic and now we're lost." Tan replied, "Let's go back and find the way out." "Are you insane? It's back there. Why would we go back?" Gwyn snapped, unable to keep calm anymore. He'd had enough. No amount of courage could convince him to return to that cursed place. But before he could protest further, Tan had already turned and started walking back. He said, "If you want to stay here, then stay alone." "Damn it, I have to get out of here." Gwyn watched Tan walk away for a while, then looked around at the darkness that enveloped them. After a moment, he also slowly and cautiously stepped forward to follow. The two of them kept walking like that, each step quiet and deliberate. The forest at night was eerily silent. Neither of them spoke a word, keeping close as they moved together. After a while, Tan, who was walking in front, suddenly turned around with an irritated expression and glared at Gwyn. "God damn it. Stop patting me on the back." Gwyn was surprised and softly asked, "What are you talking about? I didn't touch you." "Shut the hell up. You've been patting my shoulder too many times already. You think this is a good time to mess around?" Tan snapped angrily, but Nguyen's face darkened. He hadn't done anything to Tan at all. Nguyen's legs began to tremble slightly as he spoke. I didn't do anything to you." It was clearly, before Nguyen could finish his sentence, a childish voice suddenly echoed out of nowhere, eerie and indescribably haunting, piercing directly into both their minds. "Don't go. Stay and play with me. Hee. Shit, run." Apparently, Tan realized something as well. Without time to think, both men bolted, chasing each other in panic. Their footsteps pounded on the dirt path as they darted through the trees, ignoring the monstrous voice that kept echoing all around them. After a short while, Nguyen spotted something ahead and shouted in excitement, "Tan, there's a house up ahead. We're saved. Hurry." Tan saw it too. Faint lights in the distance, flickering like fireflies in the pitch black. It filled them with a renewed sense of hope. Without hesitation, the two of them sped up, racing toward the light by the roadside in front of a house. After their terrifying ordeal, they finally reached the house. It looked well kept and had probably been renovated recently. This place was located along the trail leading to the lakeside. Tan rushed forward and grabbed the gate, shaking it violently as he shouted, "Is anyone home? Please help us." Gwyn also yelled, "Help! Anybody there?" After a few moments of shouting, the lights inside the house turned on, followed by an angry male voice. "Who the hell is screaming like that in the middle of the night? Don't your mothers teach you not to wake people up?" Hearing a human voice filled both Tan and Gwyn with overwhelming relief, until they realized it was Mr. Nam's voice. This was his house. Gwyn quickly responded, yelling toward the house, "Uncle Nam, it's us. We were fishing at the lake earlier. Please let us in." Mr. Nam, hearing Nguyen's voice, opened the door. Seeing the two of them pale-faced and soaked with sweat, he frowned and said, "Come in. Why aren't you fishing anymore? Why show up here in the middle of the night?" The two of them rushed inside. "We'll explain once we're in. Outside it's just..." "All right, get in." And with that, the three entered the house. Gwyn sat trembling on a chair, glancing at Tan and sighing. Mr. Nam went into the kitchen, brewed a pot of hot tea, and returned. Gwyn sipped the tea to calm himself before speaking. "Sorry, Uncle. We didn't mean to disturb you, but we saw a ghost at the lake. That's why we came here. Hope you understand." Tan added, "That's right, Uncle. Chased us all night. Do you know if anyone's ever died at that lake?" Mr. Nam's face briefly showed surprise before turning stern. "You two are full of nonsense. I've lived near that lake for decades. Nothing like that has ever happened." "You don't believe us?" Tan pulled out his phone and opened the video he had recorded earlier when Gwyn was frightened, intending to show it to Mr. Nam. But his hand was shaking uncontrollably, and the phone slipped, falling straight into a glass of water. The glowing screen flickered and went dark. Mr. Nam muttered, all right, you boys are just scared out of your minds. And what's that smell coming off you?" Seeing Mr. Nam looking at him, Tan gave a wry smile, lifted his shoulder, and sniffed. Instantly, he pinched his nose and frowned. "Why do I stink so bad? Must be from that shirt I wore in the lake. Uncle, can I take a shower? The bathroom's out back. Go wash up, both of you. You can stay here tonight and head home tomorrow." After that, Mr. Nam got up while Tan and Gwyn headed to the bathroom. Tan went in first. "I'll shower first. Stay outside and keep watch for me. I don't feel safe alone." Gwyn nodded and waited outside while Tan began to wash. The bathroom was built in a Western style, complete with a bathtub. Tan excitedly turned on the water and soaked himself in the cool bath. He closed his eyes and relaxed, resting his knees on the tub's edge while his hands stirred the water. After all the stress and fear, this was pure bliss to him. With Gwyn just outside the door and the bathroom being indoors, he felt safe. But then, while he was relaxing, the drain pipe at some unknown point began to leak a moss-green liquid, which slowly mixed into the clear bathwater. A foul, fishy stench started to rise from it. As Tan soaked in the tub, he frowned and muttered, "Damn, why does the water in this guy's house smell so bad? Or maybe it's just me stinking." He brushed it off and continued scrubbing his body, unaware that the water in the tub was gradually turning completely green. As he reached up to grab the shampoo bottle, something happened. Suddenly, from the drain, a small hand emerged out of nowhere and grabbed his leg, yanking it hard, dragging his entire body underwater. "Ah, help!" Caught off guard, Tan didn't even have time to react. He only managed a single cry before he was pulled beneath the surface. He struggled, flailing his arms to lift his head above water, only to be dragged back down again. He couldn't breathe, water flooding into his mouth and nose, making it impossible to get air. Despite being young and strong, his strength was useless now. It was as if an invisible force was holding him down. "Come play with me." The child's voice echoed once more, sending Tan's mind deeper into panic. His last bits of resistance faded. He was utterly powerless. The hand still gripping the shampoo bottle banged it repeatedly against the edge of the tub, creating sharp, frantic sounds. Outside, Nguyen heard the splashing sounds, but thought Tan was just bathing. That was all, nothing more. But the strange, persistent thuds from the bottle made Nguyen increasingly uneasy. He called out, "Tan, are you done yet?" Still silence inside. The sound of splashing continued. Nguyen raised his voice again. "What's going on in there? Answer me or I'm kicking the door down. Help!" Tan's weak cry made Nguyen panic. He kicked the door several times with all his strength, but it wouldn't budge. Mr. Nam, hearing the commotion, rushed over in a panic and yelled, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you kicking my door?" Nguyen didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed a wooden chair nearby and began smashing it against the door, ignoring Mr. Nam's attempts to stop him. He shouted, "My friend's in danger. We have to break the door down." Crack. After a few more powerful hits, the lock finally broke. Mr. Nam and Nguyen rushed inside, only to freeze in horror at what they saw. It was still the same bathtub, but Tan was now floating face down, one hand pressing his own head underwater, the other lightly tapping the edge of the tub with the shampoo bottle. By the time they arrived, Tan had already drowned, his fate unclear. Nguyen rushed forward, grabbed Tan, and pulled him out, flipping him over. He pressed hard on Tan's chest in an attempt to perform CPR. With each press, He paused to blow air into Tan's mouth, shouting, "Wake up! Tan, wake up!" over and over again. Just as Nguyen was about to collapse in despair, Tan suddenly began to convulse violently. Water gushed out of his nose and mouth in large bursts. Nguyen, overjoyed, held onto him and patted his back, then turned to look at Mr. Nam. "Do you believe us now, uncle? We're not lying. It's trying to kill my friend." Mr. Nam looked at the two young men and couldn't say anything. He sighed, then silently helped Nguyen carry Tan into the room. A few hours later, around 2 or 3 in the morning, Tan began to stir from his unconscious state. He slowly opened his eyes and, seeing Nguyen and Mr. Nam standing nearby, felt somewhat reassured. He grabbed Nguyen's hand and spoke. It tried to kill me. I can't stay here. I need to leave this place. Calm down. It's not even morning yet. We can't go back to get the car now. Just rest, we'll head out in the morning. I'll stay with you tonight." Nguyen tried to comfort him, knowing how hard it was for Tan to remain calm after nearly dying. But at that moment, Mr. Nam, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke. "You two stay here. Don't go anywhere. I'm going out to the lake to see what's really going on." Hearing that, Nguyen immediately tried to stop him. "You can't, uncle. It's too dangerous out there. Why don't we wait until morning and go together?" But no matter how much Nguyen tried to persuade him, Mr. Nam was determined to leave. Before going, he carefully locked the door from the outside, leaving the two inside. He wasn't worried they were thieves since their car was still at the lake, and he was also convinced they weren't making up the story. He could sense that much. With his flashlight in hand, Mr. Nam left, and only the two of them remained. After Tan fully woke up, he told Nguyen everything that had happened. Something felt terribly wrong to him. "Don't you think it's strange? I got a really bad feeling. Could that scary ghost really have followed us here?" Nguyen nodded. "Yeah, I think it's strange too. Usually, houses with proper altars don't have stuff like this happen. Unless, you mean the child, this is their home?" Tan furrowed his brow and looked around. His gaze stopped at the altar. Suddenly, his heart began pounding as he grabbed Nguyen's arm and said, "Do you see anything strange about that photo on the altar?" "What photo?" Nguyen followed his gaze. The two of them stared silently at the same spot. It was a photo of a child. At first glance, it seemed normal, but the shirt the child wore looked eerily familiar. Nguyen said in fear, "That shirt. Didn't you wear one like that to scare me? It looks just like it." Tan didn't respond. He got out of bed, walked to the door, lit a cigarette, and took a long drag before saying seriously, "Let's go. We need to get out of here. I'm afraid that old man knows something, and my gut tells me we can't stay. But Mr. Nam told us to stay. Leaving now." Nguyen hesitated. After all, having a roof over their heads was better than wandering in the forest at night. But Tan just sighed. "Don't you see it? When I first came in, I didn't notice anything either. But after what happened, my senses have gotten sharper." "See what? I think you're just overthinking." Nguyen waved him off, but Tan continued, "Look at your clothes." Nguyen glanced down instinctively. His clothes, which had been clean earlier, were now covered in dust and cobwebs from top to bottom. He walked over to the chair he had just been sitting on and said in surprise, "There's so much dust and cobwebs. Doesn't this guy ever clean? There's trash everywhere. Even the chair is covered in thick dust." Tan sighed and said, "This place feels more like an abandoned house than a home." "Don't tell me." Nguyen also began to realize something wasn't right. He suddenly kicked the door hard, but it wouldn't budge. Tan threw down his cigarette and joined him. Despite their efforts, the door didn't move an inch. Frustrated, Tan cursed, "Damn it, that old man tricked us. Quick, find something to break the door." The two of them frantically searched the house for anything they could use to break through. When they got to an old trunk in the corner of the room, Tan suddenly called out, "Hey, I found something. Let me see." Tan was holding an old photo. After staring at it for a moment, he handed it to Nguyen. It showed two kids around the same age, wearing school uniforms, standing next to an old bicycle. Gwyn stared at it for a while and said, "This kid looks just like that old man. The photo's really old. Could it really be him? If so, then the kid on the altar must be the other one. That old guy has to be involved. Keep looking. See what else you can find." They put the photo down and resumed searching. This time, Gwyn found a small bundle of paper. Inside was a hand-drawn map and a missing person notice for a child. Gwyn and Tan were convinced it was for the child who had died. As they stared intently at the paper, the flashlight suddenly went out, plunging the room into darkness once again. They stood back to back on high alert. Gwyn whispered, "It's here again. We need to find a way out of here. Find something to break the door." Tan nodded. He pocketed the photo and the papers, then started moving. Gwyn followed closely, gripping a small chair, ready to smash the door. But as they approached the door, a strange sound came from the bathroom. It was the soft sound of dripping water. Though faint, in that silence they could hear it clearly. Their hearts pounded faster, and their steps quickened. Suddenly, a cold sensation spread across the floor beneath them. Gwyn instinctively lifted his foot. He felt something wet. A foul stench began to rise, and the entire house seemed to be slowly filling with a thin layer of water, spreading out across the floor. Tan felt it too. He winced, remembering earlier, and shouted, "Quick, break the hinges. Now, it's coming." Thump, thump. Gwyn grabbed the small chair and, following Tan's instructions, began smashing the hinges with all his might. The loud, jarring noise echoed throughout the house, growing more frantic with each strike. The sound of water running from the bathroom grew louder as well, and the water level had already reached their ankles. As Gwyn struck the door, he cried out in panic, "Damn it! How is this even possible? Why isn't the water draining anywhere? How can it rise this high? This must be some kind of illusion." Tan, equally anxious, responded, "I don't know either. Feels too real. I had the same feeling earlier. Damn it, just keep breaking the door. The water's rising fast. If we don't get out soon, we'll drown in here." Gwyn frantically hit the hinge harder and faster, the harsh clangs growing sharper. The water continued to surge upward as if the house existed in a world separate from reality. In this place, natural laws held no sway. It was controlled by something else, something sinister that was trapping Gwyn and Tan. After striking the hinge continuously, Nguyen's hands turned red, scratched, and trembling with pain. Seeing this, Tan took the chair from him and continued the effort. The water level climbed even higher, now reaching their waists. Despite their relentless attempts, the hinge barely budged. Only a few cracks appeared on the surrounding wall. But even that gave them a sliver of hope. Time passed, and the water crept up to their noses. The stench filled their lungs, making them dizzy. Tan took a deep breath and dove underwater, pounding the door again until he couldn't hold his breath any longer and surfaced. They took turns like this, desperate. But when it was Nguyen's turn to dive, as he raised the chair to strike again, his body suddenly froze. A small, pale hand had grabbed his arm without warning. A wave of icy coldness surged from his wrist through his entire body. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Gwyn thrashed in panic to call for Tan, but he too was suddenly seized. A second pale hand had gripped his ankle and dragged him down into the water. Both of them, wide-eyed with terror, struggled to escape. Beneath the water's surface, the ghostly figure of a frail, pale child came into view. Its soulless, dark eyes stared coldly at them. Its lips curled into a small smile as it opened its mouth, revealing a row of white teeth, and spoke in a soft, childlike voice that eerily pierced through the water and reached their ears. "Don't leave, uncles. Stay and play with me. I won't hurt you. Hee." Gwyn wanted to curse out loud. How could it say it wouldn't hurt them while trying to kill them? He opened his mouth to shout, but water immediately rushed in, forcing him to clamp it shut. His chest began to tighten with pain. The inability to breathe became unbearable. Water filled his nose and mouth, flooding his lungs. He struggled violently, but couldn't break free from the ghostly grip, which was impossibly strong. Like a predator, it dragged him down. Tan fared no better, flailing helplessly beside him. Eventually, Nguyen's resistance faded. His limbs stiffened, and he began to sink deeper under the child's pull. He felt the cold grip of death creeping in. This was it. His life would end here. If he could do it over, he and Tan would never have set foot near this cursed place. Click! Click! Suddenly, a strange noise came from outside the door, like a latch unlocking. A final spark of hope ignited in their hearts. But they were already too weak. Nguyen and Tan both collapsed, surrendering to the darkness. Death had come for the two young men. They didn't know how much time had passed, but from the void, Nguyen suddenly jolted awake. He looked around in confusion, then slapped himself and laughed with relief. "Ha ha! I'm alive! I'm alive! It was just a dream." "Tan, wake up, man!" Nguyen's laughter startled Tan awake. They were both sitting in their familiar car, parked beside the lake. The campfire Nguyen had lit earlier still burned gently in front of them. Smiling, Nguyen spoke with sudden seriousness. "I had the weirdest dream. I saw you and me being drowned by a kid in Uncle Nam's house. It felt so real. It scared the hell out of me." Tan, still dazed, looked at Nguyen in alarm. "I had the same dream." "No, it wasn't a dream. It felt way too real." Nguyen's joy faded. His expression froze. "You had the same dream?" Tan suddenly pointed out the car window next to Nguyen, stammering. "El, look over there." Nguyen turned to look, confused. "Ah!" He screamed and shouted, "Run!" Before Nguyen could finish his sentence, Tan had already flung the door open and bolted. Nguyen quickly scrambled out through the other side, and both of them ran without looking back. Their footsteps quickened with fear. They ran along a narrow path only to find themselves right back where they started, in the middle of the forest. There was no trail, no road, just the same place they had stopped at earlier. Nguyen, breathing heavily, looked at Tan ahead and spoke. "Don't you think this is strange? I feel like we're repeating the dream we just had." Tan nodded. He glanced around and then sat down on the ground with a sigh. "Damn it, this is messed up. If we really are repeating it, then you and I are going to die again. What the hell does it want from us?" "I don't know," Nguyen replied. "But if it really wanted us dead, we would have died back there already. I don't get what it actually wants." While speaking, Nguyen reached into his pocket to look for his phone, but it was nowhere to be found. He frowned. In the dream, he clearly remembered still having it, but now it was gone. Looking over at Tan, he quietly asked, "See if you've got your phone. It's too dark here." Instinctively, Tan reached into his pocket as well. Suddenly, he froze, pulling out a bulky object with surprise. It was the old photo and the hand-drawn map he had found in Mr. Nam's house. Quickly, Tan grabbed a handful of dry leaves and twigs, lit them with a lighter, and created a small flame for light. He said, "Let's just stop here for now. I'm not going back to that cursed house." Nguyen nodded and sat down beside him. It could be said that they had just come back from the dead, so now they both valued their lives more than ever. What they needed now was to avoid anything that had happened in the dream. Though still afraid, they looked surprisingly calm. Tan lit a cigarette and took a long drag, then curiously examined the old photo. There didn't seem to be anything strange about it. Just two boys standing next to each other, smiling for the camera beside an old thong-knot bicycle. But just as he was about to toss it aside, Nguyen grabbed the photo from him. Flipping it over, his expression changed with surprise. "There's writing on the back." Tan looked on curiously. On the back of the photo were scribbled, crooked handwriting. "Nguyen Ba Viet and Tran Van Nam, memory of May 15th, 1979, Viet's birthday." It's like, it wants us to know something. "The fact that this photo is still with you probably isn't a coincidence," Nguyen said, holding the picture in his hand. Tan fell silent, deep in thought, but he couldn't make sense of it either. What exactly was this photo trying to reveal? "I don't see anything strange about this photo. What is it really trying to tell us?" he muttered. While Tan was pondering, Nguyen looked down at the map and suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Isn't this a map of this area?" Look, this looks like the lake, and here's an X marking a spot. Could it be that this is the place we're supposed to find? Let me see that. Ton took the map from Gwyn, studied it for a while, then nodded thoughtfully and turned to Gwyn. If it wants us to find something, maybe it won't harm us yet. Are you afraid of dying? We need to go back to where we started and follow this map to that spot. Hell, either way, we're probably going to die. Let's try it. If we don't, it's not going to let us go anyway. Gwyn stood up, took a deep breath, and spoke. Ton also got up, tore a piece of cloth from his shirt to wrap around a dry stick to make a torch, and the two of them headed back the way they came. The dense forest was silent, covered in endless darkness. Other than the faint sound of insects, the only noise was their slow footsteps. With their lives on the line, the two men pressed forward through their fear. They seemed to merge with the night, drenched in sweat, nerves taut as they carefully made their way. Before long, after groping through the pitch-black woods, they saw the faint flicker of firelight up ahead, the fire Gwyn had lit earlier. From a distance, they paused. Gwyn took a deep breath and said, "We're here. Let's go." Ton looked at Gwyn and nodded. They returned to the fire. Scanning their surroundings, they saw nothing new, which gave them a slight sense of ease. Ton opened the trunk of the motorbike and pulled out some tools. Gwyn grabbed a small fish knife, while Ton picked up a shovel, and they both felt a bit more prepared. Ton said, "According to the map, it's in the east. If we start from here, it shouldn't be far. But in the dead of night, trying to find anything is nearly impossible." Gwyn threw the torch aside, walked to the lakeside to grab the flashlight he'd left there, and said, "Doesn't matter. Even if we can't find it, we have to try. I'm exhausted, though. Let's rest a bit." Just as he finished speaking, a cold wind carrying a thin mist swept in from nowhere, creeping into Nguyen's skin and making him shudder. His dangling hand suddenly felt icy cold. He froze in place, paralyzed with fear. From a distance, Ton's eyes widened as he stammered, Gwyn seemed to understand what Ton meant. He nodded slightly, anxious. His heart pounded like a drum, and the chilling sensation crawled up from his hand to his chest. He summoned all his courage and looked down, and there it was. A child had appeared next to Gwyn at some point. A pale little hand gripped his, and the blurry face looked up at him with a piercing stare. "Hee, mister, come play with me." Gwyn felt as if his soul was being crushed. Trembling, he forced himself to speak. Little one, please, let me go. I don't know anything." "Hee, run, mister. Come play hide and seek with me. You're not allowed to rest." The child's icy, childish voice echoed in Nguyen's ears, sending him into a panic. As he prepared to run, Ton rushed over from a distance, raised the shovel, and shouted, "You damn thing, get away!" Clang. Ton swung the shovel toward the child standing next to Gwyn, but of course it passed right through. The child had vanished, dissolving into the mist and fading into the night. Gwyn felt like he had just broken free from shackles. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, patting his chest. "That scared the hell out of me. I just said I wanted to rest a little, and it freaked me out like that. If this keeps up, even if it doesn't kill me, I'll go insane." Ton was also drenched in sweat. He wasn't even sure where he found the courage earlier. He pulled Gwyn to his feet and said, "Let's go. It's not safe here. Too close to the water." "Yeah." The two men set off again, heading toward the marked spot on the map. Under the lonely beam of their flashlight, they walked steadily forward. Midnight in this place reeked of death. Only the sound of their own heartbeats reminded them they were still alive. As they entered the forest's edge, the surrounding mountains loomed in the darkness like a fortress. Aiming for the marked spot to the east, they hurried in that direction. Sure enough, the area felt more ominous than anywhere else, an overwhelming sense of isolation and coldness that only they could feel. The moon rose, casting a pale light through the black clouds and onto the barren mountain. Suddenly, they stopped in their tracks. The eerie laughter of a child echoed ahead, like a tide rising through the night, slowly reaching their ears. But despite the terrifying sound, Nguyen, hardened by previous mental torment, paid it no mind. The two of them ran forward, breathless, and soon saw a massive, lonely boulder looming ahead. On top of the rock sat the gaunt child, smiling creepily, then vanishing into the darkness. Ngwin and Tan, oddly, were no longer surprised. Tan pulled out the map and shone his flashlight on it. "Here! It's here!" he exclaimed. Ngwin nodded, and they began searching around, hoping to find whatever it was they were meant to discover. After a while of searching with no results, Ngwin frowned. "There's nothing here. I'm losing my mind. What does it even want from us?" Tan sighed in frustration, but his eyes soon caught something near the boulder. "Step aside. Look what you're standing on." Ngwin quickly moved, staring at the ground where Tan had pointed, and froze in surprise. "It's a petal." Tan came closer. "So this is what we were supposed to find? Damn it, I've bought dozens of these things before." "No, it's not that. Give me the photo," Ngwin said suddenly, realizing something. He grabbed the photo from Tan and examined it carefully. "The ground here looks slightly raised. Try digging it up with the shovel." Tan looked a bit puzzled. "You think something's buried here?" "Yeah, just dig. I have a feeling." Thump, thump. Tan drove the shovel into the earth, scooping away layers of dirt. The top was covered in leaves and rotting wood, so it didn't take long for him to dig about 10 centimeters down. Ngwin stood beside him, shining the flashlight, his eyes fixated on one spot, unable to speak. The shovel kept striking the earth, echoing in the quiet surroundings, accompanied by the heavy breaths of the two men. But even after digging a hole about 30 centimeters deep, Tan hadn't found anything suspicious. Frustrated, he threw the shovel aside and sat down, panting. "There's nothing here. Damn, I'm exhausted." Ngwin shook his head too. Could his intuition have been wrong? He handed the flashlight to Tan and picked up the discarded shovel, angrily stabbing it into the hole as he cursed. "Hey you, are you messing with us? You've had your fun. Do whatever the hell you want now. Wait, there's something down here." Just as Tan was about to give up, he turned to where the shovel had struck. Though the impact sound was faint, he instantly sensed something was off. When Ngwin jabbed it into the ground, the sound clearly indicated it had hit metal, not soil. Tan hurriedly grabbed the shovel and began digging frantically. Dirt and small rocks flew as he unearthed the ground. Soon, a strange object began to emerge. Though only partially revealed, Ngwin's eyes quickly identified it. "That's the car from the photo." "Yes, but why is it buried here? What does it have to do with that child?" Both men stared in shock at the rusted, dirt-covered mass before them, their minds racing with strange thoughts. The eerie silence around them seemed to mirror their contemplation. Tan furrowed his brow. It must be connected to the old man. There were two people and this car in the photo. One is dead. The car is buried. Only one person remains. Ngwin spoke thoughtfully. Could it be that the child was killed by him? Maybe it wants us to uncover the truth. If that's the case, I don't know for sure if he's a killer, but he's definitely involved. We have to confront him, or better yet, report it to the police. Tana's voice was firm as he looked back at the old, buried car. He still didn't know why it was hidden there. Everything was just speculation. Whether Mr. Nam had really killed someone remained an open question. Ngwin said, "If we confront him directly, he'll probably deny everything. And in that dream earlier, we were at his house. I still can't tell if that was real or just a dream. If it was a dream, great. But if it actually happened, then I've been thinking the same thing. Whatever, let's just go. We'll deal with it when we get there. Improvise if we have to." With that, Tan started walking off and Ngwin quickly followed. They shared the same thoughts. What would the truth reveal? What terrifying secret was waiting to be uncovered? They each had their own theories, but neither was sure. As they disappeared into the trees, they left behind a quiet night shrouded in mist. On the large rock, the child still sat, watching them dig, and as they left, it let out a strange giggle. The eerie laughter echoed through the mountains. Even from afar, The two men could still hear it, sending a chill down their spines. They took a deep breath and continued walking down the trail, heading straight toward the haunted house from their dream. Before long, relying on Nguyen's remaining memory, the two men once again found themselves standing before Mr. Nam's house. The lonely home stood at the edge of the forest, right by the trail. The only light came from the lamp above the gate, casting shadows of the two men. Inside, the house was still dark, just like in their dream. Nguyen took a deep breath, glanced at Tan, then called out loudly, "Uncle Nam! Uncle Nam, are you home?" They shouted for a while before the lights inside flickered on. An irritated voice came from within. "Who the hell is that? You think no one needs sleep or what?" "It's us, sir. We need to talk to you. Can you please open the door?" Nguyen said sincerely. The door creaked open, and Mr. Nam appeared, surprised to see them both. He invited them in. What happened next mirrored the dream they had. Mr. Nam made tea and told them to take a shower. But this time, even if someone gave Tan 10 more lives, he wouldn't dare. Nguyen scanned the house carefully, surprised. It was clearly clean and well-kept, not like what he had experienced. Then his eyes landed on the corner of the room, the spot where they had found the photo and the map. He felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. The old chest was still there, but now it was open. Mr. Nam noticed Nguyen's gaze and stepped forward to block his view. "What are you two doing here if you're not fishing anymore?" Nguyen pulled his eyes away and glanced at Tan. Tan walked straight past Mr. Nam toward the chest. Surprised, the old man rushed over, trying to push Tan back, yelling, "Damn you both! What is this? A robbery in the middle of the night? Get out! Get the hell out of my house!" Though he was shouting, his face showed no sign of fear. Tan didn't say a word. He shoved Mr. Nam aside and flung the chest open. Mr. Nam, now furious, grabbed a stick near the wall. "There's nothing here for you. You thieves deserve to die." With that, he raised the stick and swung it down at Tan. But Nguyen was quicker. He rushed forward and grabbed Mr. Nam, speaking softly. "We didn't come here to rob you. We have money, we don't need anything from you. Are you scared we'll uncover the secret in that chest?" "I don't know what you're talking about. What do you want?" Mr. Nam saw Tan open the chest, only to find it empty. He breathed a sigh of relief and put on an innocent face. Nguyen smiled, released him, walked over to the table, and took a sip of hot tea. "We just want to talk. Please sit down. We'll ask what we need to ask, and then we'll leave." Mr. Nam had a bad feeling, but there were two young men in front of him. He couldn't fight his way out even if he wanted to, so he sat down. "Ask away. What's this all about?" The two men didn't say much. They simply placed the photo and the map on the table, pushing them toward Mr. Nam. Upon seeing the two items, Mr. Nam's expression shifted, but he quickly composed himself and asked in a surprised tone, "What's this? Why are you showing me this?" Nguyen smiled. "You really don't know?" "No, I don't understand what you two want." Nguyen pointed at the photo and said, "This is you, and this, who is it? Why do you say this is me?" Mr. Nam asked angrily, but Nguyen quickly flipped the photo over and read aloud the lines written on the back. Mr. Nam was left speechless. After a moment, he took a deep breath and said, "Yes, that's me. But what does this photo have to do with you? And how did you even get it? No need to dodge around. Let me be straight. The child next to you is dead. And this map, you probably drew it. We don't have much time." Tan, sitting next to him, interrupted irritably, but Nguyen quickly continued. "We didn't come here with bad intentions. That child really is dead. And as for these two items, we found them in a dream, though that's probably hard for you to believe. And we've already gone to the marked location on the map. We found something buried there. The same bicycle from this photo." Nguyen finished and observed Mr. Nam's expression, but to their surprise, the old man suddenly laughed. "You think just because of this photo I killed someone? Ha! Ridiculous!" Nguyen gave a slight chuckle and replied, "We only said the child was dead, we never said you killed him. Unless you really did." Mr. Nam's face darkened. He had just realized he had slipped up. I didn't kill anyone. You two need to leave. This has nothing to do with me. Nguyen and Tan could sense that their suspicions were likely correct. They both stood up, picked up the photo and map, and said, "If you insist on staying silent, then we have no choice. We'll involve the police. I'm certain you won't escape justice. Let's go." With that, Nguyen decisively walked out with Tan, hearts pounding. Truthfully, the photo and map weren't enough to serve as solid evidence. No one would believe their story about a dream. The incident had happened so long ago that reopening the case seemed impossible. But they were taking a gamble. Either Mr. Nam would call them back to explain everything, or they'd have to walk away and find another way. Their firm steps left Mr. Nam sitting in a storm of emotions. As they approached the gate, he finally stood, exhaled a heavy sigh, and said, "Come back. I'll talk." Nguyen and Tan paused, sweat pouring down their faces. They looked at each other, gave a faint smile, and returned to sit opposite Mr. Nam. Nguyen's eyes locked onto the old man, who now looked down at the photo in his hands, fingers trembling. Tears slowly streamed down his cheeks, dripping into the steaming cup of tea. He spoke, "Do you really want to know the truth?" "Yes, please, tell us." Mr. Nam placed the photo down and stared out toward the lake. "It's true. I was the cause of Viet's death. My best friend. His body is at the bottom of that lake." Though they had braced themselves, hearing it directly from Mr. Nam still shocked them. Nguyen asked, curiosity thick in his voice, "Why did you do it?" "It's a long story. It happened in 1979, on Viet's birthday. It would have been just an ordinary day, nothing remarkable. Back then, my family was extremely wealthy while Viet was an orphan. His parents had died young. But we were very close. On his birthday, there was no celebration, but I stole money from my parents to buy him a thong-knot bicycle so he wouldn't have to walk nearly 10 kilometers to school every day. None of this would have come to light if I hadn't asked someone to take a commemorative photo of us. When I brought that photo home, my parents saw it. Recognizing the new bike and realizing money was missing, they stormed over to Viet's house and beat him brutally, demanding the bike back, unaware that I had given it to him. In their rage, they went too far, and Viet died from the beating right in front of me. I was powerless, just a child, watching my best friend be beaten to death by my own family. His final look still haunts me. After he died, my parents stuffed his body into a large sack, filled it with rocks, and threw it into the lake to hide it. But not long after, they both died strange deaths. My father, riding that same bicycle drunk, fell into a canal and drowned. My mother, also riding the bike to the market in the rain, slipped and died. After that, I got scared. I buried the bicycle deep in the forest. Time passed. People left this wilderness. Only I stayed, racked with guilt. I came here every day to fish, to keep Viet company. I've seen him appear, angry and full of sorrow. I even built a small altar for him, but it still wasn't enough. He wanted something more. After Mr. Nam finished, Tan looked at him with sympathy and sighed. "This wasn't entirely your fault. But now that the truth is out, we have to retrieve his body and give him a proper burial. You think I haven't tried? I've spent years hiring people to search the lake. Not even a bone was found." Mr. Nam replied sadly, but Tan insisted, "It's not about anyone else. You have to be the one to retrieve him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to us in a dream. Then let's go. If he wanted me dead, I'd already be long gone." The three of them went together to the lakeshore. The car's headlights illuminated the misty water. All three stared into the distance, and there, at the center of the lake, the boy's faint figure appeared. He floated above the water, smiling eerily. Mr. Nam looked at him and spoke. "Viet, I wronged you. You can take my life. If not, let me atone and help you move on." The boy giggled softly, then dissolved into the lake. Nguyen and Tan no longer felt fear, only something hard to explain. They tied a rope around Mr. Nam's waist and secured the other end to the car. If anything went wrong, they would pull him up immediately. He wore professional diving gear with an underwater flashlight, which reassured them a little. He descended into the water. Occasionally, he resurfaced for air, then dove again to search elsewhere. Suddenly, the rope connecting him to the car went taut and shook violently. Alarmed, Nguyen shouted, "Pull him up, now!" Tan, just as panicked, pulled with all his might. It was incredibly heavy. They struggled for a long time before finally pulling Mr. Nam to shore. He was holding an old, muddy burlap sack. As they got closer, they saw a tear in the sack caused by a fishing hook. A revolting stench filled the air, making them both gag. Inside the sack were white bones. The skull was caved in, with a long crack reaching down to the eye socket, a clear sign of a brutal, fatal blow. Mr. Nam carefully washed the bones, wrapped them in a large white cloth, and turned to the two young men. He pulled out 1,000,000 VND and handed it to them. "Sorry for dragging you into this. Here's your payment. Please just leave." Tan gently pushed the money back and handed him another 1,000,000. "Use this for his burial. Give him a proper rest. And this is for tomorrow's fishing." "You mean?" "Yes, night fishing is what we do." Tan and Nguyen both laughed heartily. Mr. Nam finally smiled and walked away, cradling the white bundle. Watching the middle-aged man disappear into the distance, the two felt a deep sorrow for both him and the child. "Let's go. Honestly, I'm scared out of my mind. Not fishing at night anymore. I'd rather stay home with my wife." "I thought you were tougher than that. What a coward." "Haha." Nguyen laughed. They got in the car and drove away. Nguyen rolled down the window to smoke a cigarette. But as he stretched his hand outside, he felt an icy chill. A creeping dread overcame him. Tan, hands trembling on the wheel, shouted, "Close the damn window. There, look, damn it." Nguyen quickly pulled his hand back, too afraid to even glance outside. And then, that familiar eerie voice echoed through the car, making both men smile. "The NK you both. Come play again sometime."